I never imagined that a single ordinary question could change the way I saw my entire life, my role as a mother, and the son I believed I knew better than anyone. It began so simply, almost too simply to ever suspect that something devastating was about to unfold. I picked up the phone, dialing with the same warmth and excitement I had carried for months, and asked my son Max, "Honey, when is the wedding date? I need to finalize my dress fitting." But before he could even open his mouth, Lena, my daughter-in-law, leaned closer to the receiver and said with a smile I could hear even without seeing her face, "Oh, we got married yesterday without you?" Those words, so casually spoken, stabbed me harder than any betrayal I had experienced in my 68 years of life. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I waited, thinking maybe she was joking. Maybe this was one of those odd pranks young couples play. But no giggle followed, no whisper of, "Just kidding," no apology. Instead, there was silence, thick, suffocating silence, followed by the sound of Lena settling comfortably onto a sofa I had bought for them with money I should have saved for my retirement. Max didn't say a word. He didn't defend me, didn't clarify, didn't soften the blow. He was there letting his wife throw those words at me like cold stones. I remember gripping the phone so tightly my fingers hurt, staring at the wall as if trying to make sense of what I had just heard. Without me. Without me. A wedding I had dreamed about, saved for, planned for in my own quiet, loving way. A wedding where I had already imagined standing proudly beside my son, watching him start a new chapter of his life. And yet, the chapter had already been written, signed, sealed, and celebrated without my name anywhere in the story. My mind went immediately to the pale lavender dress I had folded so carefully inside my closet. I had spent weeks choosing it. Soft lace, flowing sleeves. A gentle shimmer that made me feel graceful, elegant, worthy of appearing in Max's wedding photos. Photos I would never appear in. Photos that were already posted online, showing smiling faces of people who apparently were special enough. Lena's parents standing proudly, her siblings lifting champagne glasses, her cousins cheering. And there I was, the person who paid their rent for 3 years, the one who took buses in the rain to bring them groceries when they couldn't afford food, the one who helped them furnish every corner of their home. I was nowhere. Not even in a blurry background. Not even mentioned. I stood there replaying her words. "We got married yesterday without you." It felt like someone had taken the last 3 years of my life, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every dollar I scraped from my fixed income, and thrown them into a fire. I remembered how I had saved $30,000 as a wedding gift, how I had cleaned my house from top to bottom, expecting them to come celebrate after the ceremony. I remembered calling my sister Deanna in Chicago, telling her proudly that Max would be getting married soon and how excited I was. Every memory twisted painfully now, mocking me. Max finally spoke, but his voice was rehearsed hollow. "Mom, it was a small ceremony, really intimate, just us and the witnesses." But I had seen the photos. The decorations, the crowd, the champagne, the bouquet toss. It was not intimate. It was not small. The only thing missing was me. My heart cracked in a way I can't fully describe. It wasn't just the wedding. It was the realization that my presence meant nothing to them. My existence was useful only when it filled their fridge, paid their bills, funded their desires. As long as I was quiet, compliant, and financially generous, I was tolerated. But the moment it came to something meaningful, something sacred, something symbolic, I was invisible. That night, I sat alone in my living room, the same place where I had once imagined joyful gatherings, the kind where laughter fills the air and memories are made. Instead, I stared at the unused wedding gift envelope still lying on my table. I touched the soft lace of my lavender dress hanging from my wardrobe door, and tears blurred my vision. Not tears of weakness, tears of awakening, tears of a woman who had finally seen the truth beneath the facade. I replayed every moment of the past 3 years, every rushed bank transfer, every canceled plan so I could help them. Every time I skipped buying something for myself because they had emergency, I remembered how Lena always used a sugary, sweet voice when she needed money, and how Max always avoided eye contact whenever I asked even a gentle question about their behavior. I had overlooked so much. I had excused so much. And now I wondered, had they ever truly valued me, or had they simply valued what I could give? As I sat there, I felt something shift inside me, small but unmistakably powerful. For the first time in a long while, a quiet voice whispered inside me, "Enough." The next morning, I woke up with a heaviness I couldn't shake off. But beneath that heaviness was something else, a simmering, quiet strength. The kind of strength a woman discovers only after she has been wounded enough times to finally stop bleeding and start building armor. I walked to the kitchen, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the table where I had planned so many surprises for Max. I used to imagine he'd come over with flowers on Mother's Day, that he'd tell me about his dreams, that we'd share dinners the way we did when he was little. But now, in that harsh morning light, those hopes felt like paper illusions, fragile, easily torn, easily burned. I picked up my phone and stared at the screen. I half expected a message from Max apologizing, explaining, comforting. But there was nothing, not a single notification from him. Instead, what I found were pictures of the wedding I had been excluded from, pictures I couldn't stop myself from opening, even though each one felt like another slap. There was Lena in her beautiful white gown, the one I unknowingly helped pay for. There were her parents hugging Max as if he had been theirs all along. There were their friends, all of them celebrating under fairy lights and music. And there was Max, my son, flashing the brightest smile he had worn in years, as if he had shed an old life and stepped into a new one that did not include me. That was the moment something solidified inside me. Something cold, something sharp, something fiercely protective of the woman I had neglected for far too long myself. I closed the photos, turned off my phone, and took a long, steady breath. I decided that day that I would no longer be the mother who existed only in the background of her own life. A week passed before Lena called. Her voice was trembling this time. Stripped of its usual bravado, "Renate, the rent is due. The landlord is threatening us. You forgot the transfer." Forgot? The audacity of that word nearly made me laugh. She said it like I had missed a chore, like feeding them, housing them, financing them was some sort of assigned duty, my eternal responsibility. I could imagine her standing there, phone in hand, expecting me to panic the way I always did and rush to the bank. But this time, I didn't panic. I felt nothing. Not anger, not guilt, just clarity. "Lena," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, almost detached. "Didn't I warn you? I only help special people." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. The same silence they had handed me the day of the wedding, only now it was my turn to deliver it. I could practically hear her breath hitching, her mind scrambling to find the right words. Renee, I don't understand. We were always special to you. You're like a second mother to me. A second mother. The statement would have warmed me once, maybe even brought tears to my eyes. But now it only sounded like manipulation wrapped in sentiment, a script she had repeated too many times. I ended the call. For once, I didn't explain, didn't justify, didn't comfort. I simply stood up, walked to the mirror, and looked at the woman staring back. She looked tired, yes, but there was something new in her eyes, something fierce. I began listing every expense I had covered for them, every transfer, every grocery run, every emergency. The total came out to $33,400. I stared at that number and felt a punch of disbelief. Had I really sacrificed that much? Had I really drained my savings to support two adults who couldn't even invite me to their wedding? When Max called later, I let the phone ring. When he texted, I deleted it. I didn't block him, not yet. I wanted him to see that I simply wasn't responding. Not this time. Not anymore. That afternoon, I went for a walk, not because I needed to run an errand or buy groceries for them, but simply because I wanted to breathe. I walked past the park where Max used to run as a child, where he once gifted me a tiny daisy he had picked with his little hands. I remembered that boy, that sweet, innocent boy. And for a heartbreaking moment, I wondered where he had gone. Had he disappeared slowly over the years? Or had he been replaced by someone I didn't recognize long ago? But I had been too blinded by love to notice. I ended up at the bank, standing in front of the entrance like someone frozen between two realities, the past where I gave endlessly, and the future where I finally claimed my life back. Mr. Klein, the bank manager, recognized me instantly and waved. He was a kind man, someone who had seen my account drain month after month without commenting, though I often caught the concern in his eyes. Mrs. Richter, he greeted warmly. How can I help you today? I need to cancel all automatic transfers, I said, and I want my accounts protected. No one else should have access to anything. His eyebrows rose, surprised but respectful. Are you sure? You've been supporting them for so long. Yes. And that was my mistake, I replied. As he processed my request, my phone buzzed relentlessly inside my bag. Max. Then Lena. Then Max again. They must have spoken to the landlord, must have realized the money wasn't coming like it always had. But I didn't take the phone out. I didn't even look at the screen. When the paperwork was done, Mr. Klein handed it to me and said gently, "You're making a wise decision. Sometimes generosity becomes a trap when others take advantage." His words sank deep into my bones, deeper than perhaps he realized. I walked out of the bank lighter than I had felt in years. I felt unburdened, unchained, almost free. And yet, I also knew deep inside my gut that Max and Lena were not going to accept this so easily. People who grow comfortable feeding off someone else rarely accept hunger with grace. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. When I arrived home that afternoon, I noticed something strange the moment I stepped onto my porch. 3 cars were parked in front of my house, Max's, Lena's, and a sleek black sedan I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened, not with fear, but with something sharper, intuition. I had unlocked my door countless times without thinking, but this time I paused. Through the narrow gap of the curtains, I could see shadows moving inside my living room. Voices. The soft thump of feet. Papers rustling. My papers. They were in my house. The keys. I had given them keys years ago when I believed trust was an unbreakable thing. when I thought love between family was sacred and unconditional. I didn't know then that trust given to the wrong people becomes a weapon they eventually point at you. I stepped inside, and the room fell silent. Max sat slumped on my sofa with his head in his hands. Lena paced like a restless wolf, her eyes darting. And behind them stood a man in a gray suit with a tidy briefcase. Rifling through documents I kept in a drawer they had no right to open. The shock didn't come from their presence. It came from how comfortable they looked there, as if my home had quietly become theirs, as if my boundaries had dissolved simply because they wanted something. What is happening here? I asked, my voice stronger than I expected. They all turned to me like I was the intruder in my own house. Lena rushed forward first, her face a mixture of false concern and panic. Renee, thank God you're here. We need to talk. My gaze moved to the man behind her, who closed his briefcase slowly and approached me with a confident, oily smile. Mrs. Richter, he said, extending a hand I didn't shake. I'm Dr. Pfizer, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental well-being and have asked me to assess the situation. Concerned. Mental well-being assess. The words dropped one by one like tiny bombs. I looked at Max, hoping just for one. Second, to find a trace of the boy I had raised, the boy who hugged me after nightmares, the boy whose small hands once clung to my dress in crowded places. But what I saw in his eyes wasn't love. It wasn't even guilt. It was fear. Fear of losing something he depended on. Fear of losing me, not as a mother, but as a resource. We're worried about you, Mom, he said in a rehearsed tone that mirrored the one from the wedding call. Your behavior has been strange lately. You cut us off financially for no reason. You're isolating yourself. We think you might need professional help. Professional help. This was their strategy, their angle, their justification for invading my home and bringing a lawyer into my living room. Lena stepped closer, trying to take my hand. I pulled away. Renee, honey, she said in that saccharine voice she used whenever she wanted money. You've been under so much stress. You're alone. You're at an age where confusion can happen. We just want to protect you. Confusion. That word thundered in my ears. Now I understood. Now I saw the full picture. They weren't here to apologize or explain. They weren't here to mend anything. They were here to take control, legal control. They wanted guardianship. They wanted access to every dollar, every account, every asset. They wanted to turn me into a helpless old woman on paper so they could strip me of autonomy in real life. And they thought I would simply crumble under their pressure. I took a deep breath and went to the table, gathering my documents from under the lawyer's hands. These are my private papers, I said sharply. You have no right to go through them. Mrs. Richter, the lawyer replied in a calm, patronizing tone, your children are concerned for your safety. They believe your decision-making ability is impaired. I echoed. Lena raised her chin. Yes. You cut off essential support. You're making irrational decisions. Irrational. My voice cracked with disbelief. You mean deciding that my money belongs to me? The truth blossomed hideously in the room like a poisonous flower. Lena exploded first. You can't do this to us, Renee! We counted on you. We have bills to pay, rent, the car, the credit card you co-signed. We made financial plans because you always helped. There it was, the unvarnished truth. Max stood up now, his face red. Mom, be reasonable. You can't just stop helping out of nowhere. Reasonable. I repeated the word burning in my mouth. Reasonable means financing your life while you treat me like a stranger. Reasonable means ignoring the humiliation of your wedding. Reasonable means pretending you too love me when the only thing you love is my money. The lawyer placed a folder on the table. We have paperwork ready, he said smoothly. A temporary power of attorney so your son and daughter-in-law can manage your finances until you are feeling more stable. The arrogance of it would have made me laugh if it weren't so sinister. I picked up the folder without opening it and dropped it straight into the trash can. The look on Lena's face was pure rage hidden behind a fragile layer of desperation. You can't do this to us, she hissed. I can, I replied. And I am. Max's voice turned sharp. Mom, think carefully. This is going to end badly for you. You're going to end up alone. Max, I said quietly, heartbreak threading through every syllable. I already am alone. The difference is, now it is by my choice, not your neglect. I walked to the door and pointed outside. Get out, all of you. They stared at me as if I had set fire to the room. Lena's eyes filled with furious disbelief. This won't end here, Renette. I know, I said. That's why I'm starting to protect myself now. And I closed the door behind them with a calmness I didn't know I possessed. The lock clicked into place, and for the first time in years, the silence inside my house felt like a gift, not emptiness, not loneliness, but freedom. The silence after they left wasn't quiet. It was roaring. It echoed through every room of my house, rattling memories loose like dust shaken from old shelves. I stood with my back against the door for a long moment, breathing, grounding myself, feeling the tremble in my fingers slowly settle. I didn't realize until then how tightly I had been holding myself, how long I had been shrinking to make room for their needs, their moods, their demands. But now, with them gone, I felt my lungs expand fully for the first time in years. I walked deeper into the house, my steps steady, my mind clearer than it had been in a long time. Their presence still lingered, the smell of Lena's perfume, the faint warmth of footsteps on the carpet, the disarray of papers they had touched without permission. My hands curled into fists as I remembered that lawyer digging through my drawers, flipping through documents I kept safe for decades. The violation of it all made my skin crawl. This was my sanctuary, my safe space, my memories. And they had trespassed without hesitation, as if everything I owned already belonged to them. I sat down at the dining table, the same place where I used to pack lunches for Max, where I wrote checks to cover their bills, where I convinced myself I was being a good mother by giving until it hurt. And now, oddly enough, this table felt like a battlefield more than anything else. But instead of feeling defeated, I felt awakened. I reached for my phone, thinking of calling someone, anyone, to make sense of it all. But who would I call? Most of my old friends had drifted away because I spent so many years revolving around Max and Lena's crisis. I canceled outings, skipped gatherings, turned down invitations. I became that woman who disappeared into the shadows of her children's lives. The truth was I had no one close left. And yet, for the first time, the loneliness didn't scare me. It felt honest, like standing in an empty room where the air is fresh again after everyone toxic has finally left. Suddenly, the phone buzzed violently on the table. Max again. Then Lena. Then Max. They alternated like a coordinated attack, their persistence almost laughable now that I understood what motivated them. I let the phone vibrate until it stilled. I didn't owe them a response. Not anymore. But I did owe one thing to myself. It was time to protect my future, my mind, my safety, and the life I had left. The next morning, I woke with a purpose I hadn't felt since my husband, Robert, was alive. The memory of his face came to me as I got ready, how he used to tell me gently, "Rennet, you give too much. One day, someone will take advantage of that heart." I had always laughed it off, believing Max would be different, that my love for him would be enough to keep him grounded, grateful, kind. But no amount of love can teach someone what they don't want to learn. I drove straight to the office of Mr. Weber, an attorney I had worked with years ago when handling Robert's will. He had been kind, patient, professional, someone I trusted. When I walked into his office, he looked up with a warm but concerned expression. "Mrs. Richter," he greeted, standing to shake my hand. "What brings you here today?" The moment I sat down, the weight of everything hit me again. But I kept my composure. I told him everything from the beginning: the wedding, the exclusion, the financial exploitation, the invasion of my home, the attempt to force guardianship paperwork on me. I spoke calmly, but each sentence felt like lifting a heavy stone that had been lodged in my chest. Mr. Weber listened carefully, his eyes narrowing with every detail. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, his tone turning serious. "Mrs. Richter, what your son and daughter in law attempted is considered elder financial abuse, and it is far more common than people realize." My breath caught. Hearing the word abuse struck me in a way I didn't expect. I had always pictured abuse as bruises or shouting or threats. I never imagined that silent manipulation, unspoken expectations, and endless financial draining could fall under the same category. But now that he said it out loud, I felt tears sting my eyes, not because of pain, but because someone finally named what I had been experiencing for years. "They entered your home without consent," he continued. "They went through your private documents. They attempted to coerce you into signing a power of attorney under emotional pressure. If they escalate, we will have everything we need to protect you legally." For the first time, I felt anchored, safe, seen. "Mr. Weber," I said quietly, "I need to make sure they can't take my money, my home, or my freedom. I need to protect myself." He nodded. "We will document everything. We will secure your accounts. And we will prepare for the possibility that they try something more aggressive." The thought sent a chill through me. More aggressive. People who rely financially on others, he explained, don't give up easily when the supply is cut off. I knew he was right. Max and Lena didn't love me. They loved my generosity, my compliance, the open doors and open wallet they thought were their rights, not privileges. Taking that away didn't just upset them. It threatened their entire comfortable existence. Mr. Weber and I worked for over 3 hours. We went through my bank statements, every transfer, every gift, every expense. When he calculated the total, $33,400, he let out a low whistle. "Mrs. Richter," he murmured, shaking his head, "you could have lived comfortably off this money traveled, enjoyed your retirement. Instead, you financed 2 fully capable adults who abused your kindness." Hearing someone state it so plainly was painful, but cleansing too. Like ripping off a bandage and letting air finally touch a wound that had been festering too long. Before I left, he gave me a firm look. "You did the right thing, and you are not alone anymore. If they try anything, you call me immediately." I thanked him, and as I walked out of his office, I felt something inside me straighten, my spine, my spirit, maybe both. My next stop was the hardware store. In the past, The only reason I ever came here was to pick up tools or supplies for Max and Lena's apartment, things they urgently needed. Because, of course, they always needed something. But this time, I was here for myself. And that alone felt like a small victory. Mrs. Richter, the owner, greeted warmly. "What brings you in today? Another emergency with your son?" "No," I said with a small smile. "This time, it's for my own house. I need to change all the locks." He blinked, surprised, but not questioning. And I added, "I want the best quality you have." While the owner went to gather the strongest lock systems they carried, his son Ethan walked in from the back of the store. I remembered him vaguely, a polite young man who installed home security systems. He greeted me with the kind of genuine warmth I rarely received from Max anymore. "Mrs. Richter, good to see you. Need anything installed today?" His timing felt almost like fate stepping in. "Yes," I said. "I need new locks, and I want a full security system. Cameras, alarms, everything necessary." He blinked, surprised. "For your house?" "For my safety?" I corrected. He didn't ask for details. Sometimes kindness is the ability to stay silent when someone doesn't want to explain their wounds. "We can install everything tomorrow morning," he said, first thing. "Thank you, Ethan." I replied, and those two words felt heavier than they should, because I wasn't just thanking him for installation. I was thanking him for offering me the one thing Max and Lena had been trying to steal from me: control. As I drove home with the new locks in the back seat, my phone rang again, this time from an unknown number. A part of me knew exactly who it was before I even answered. Their persistence was predictable by now. When I picked up, Lena's voice hit me like a rehearsed performance soaked in fake sweetness. "Renee, please don't hang up. We need to talk. Let's just act like civilized adults." I said nothing. I didn't give her the satisfaction of acknowledging her emotional theatrics. She continued, "Listen, Max and I have talked about the wedding. It was a mistake. We were nervous, okay? We want to make it up to you. How about dinner at your house? Something special. We can cook together like we used to." The manipulation in her voice was so thick, it could have coated the walls. She wasn't calling because she regretted excluding me from the wedding. She wasn't calling to repair our relationship. She was calling because their rent was due, because their bills were piling up, because the comfortable life funded by my wallet had suddenly splintered. "Lena?" I said, keeping my voice slow and steady. "How much rent do you owe?" Her silence was immediate and deafening. She didn't expect directness. Manipulators never do. 2 months, she finally admitted. $1,000. I felt no pity, none at all. "And tell me," I asked, "do you miss me or my money?" She inhaled sharply. Then, in a moment of surprising honesty, she said, "Both." Her voice trembled, but there was no sincerity in it. She was cornered. And people who depend on manipulation become strangely honest when their traps stop working. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't even explain. I simply said, "I warned you I only help special people. And you made it very clear I was not special enough to attend your wedding." Then I hung up. No trembling. No doubt. No guilt. A clean final click. For the first time in years, the act of hanging up the phone felt like power instead of abandonment. That afternoon, I drove to the beauty salon where I hadn't stepped foot in over a year. Every time I planned an appointment, there had been an emergency. Lena needed medication. Max needed groceries. Their electricity bill was overdue. Their car needed repairs. There was always something. and I always put myself last. Mrs. Ritter, Cynthia, my favorite stylist, exclaimed. I thought you ran away or something. It's been forever. I've been busy, I said, smiling softly. But today is for me, she beamed. Well, sit down. We're giving you the whole treatment. As her fingers combed through my hair, I felt a strange sensation, guilt, but then relief. It was guilt because I wasn't used to doing things for myself. Relief because I knew it was finally time. Cynthia chatted about her kids, her life, her dreams. She never asked for money. She never hinted for favors. She never guilted me into anything. She simply talked to me like a human being, and it made me realize how starved I had been for authentic connection. When she finished, she placed a mirror in my hands. You look beautiful, she said, but you look lighter, happier. I am, I admitted. I finally learned to say no. Later that evening, when I returned home freshly renewed and smelling faintly of lavender shampoo, there was a car I didn't recognize parked in front of my house. My heart quickened, half expecting Max and Lena to have returned with more legal support. But as I got closer, I saw an elderly woman sitting on my porch steps. She stood when she saw me. Mrs. Richter. Yes, I said cautiously. I'm Eleanor Brooks. I live next door. We've never properly met. Yesterday I heard, well, voices coming from your house. They sounded heated. I wanted to check on you. Her sincerity nearly broke me. After years of giving, of begging for love from people who only wanted money, here stood a stranger, worried for my well-being without wanting anything in return. Come inside, I told her. Let me make you some coffee. We sat at my kitchen table and I told her everything, not because I wanted sympathy, but because the words had been buried inside me for too long. Eleanor listened without interrupting, without judging, without gasping, in dramatics, the way Lena often did to manipulate me. Her presence felt steady, anchored, safe. When I finished, she reached out and squeezed my hand with strong, weathered fingers. Mrs. Richter, she said softly, you did the right thing. I went through something similar with my daughter years ago. She treated me like a bank account, not a mother. Cutting her off was the hardest thing I ever did, but it saved my sanity. What happened after? I asked. She grew up, Eleanor said simply. But it took losing the money for her to find maturity. Her words filled me with something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. That night, after Eleanor left, I sat in my living room thinking about her story. Maybe, just maybe, boundaries don't destroy relationships. They reveal which ones were real in the first place. Before bed, I whispered to myself, Max will either grow or disappear. It was a painful truth. But for once, I was ready to accept whichever future came. The next morning arrived quietly, almost too quietly. The sunlight came through my curtains in soft, golden lines, warming the room, but my mind was already alert, already preparing for what the day might bring. I made coffee and took a slow sip, letting the calmness settle into my bones. It felt strange, this peace. For years, my mornings had been filled with rushed bank transfers, anxious messages from Max, and guilt gnawing at me before I even finished breakfast. But today, the only sound was the steady hum of my coffee machine and the chirping of birds outside. No emergencies, no begging calls, no demands. At exactly 8 a.m., Ethan and his father arrived to change the locks and install the security system. I watched through the window as they unloaded tools and equipment from their truck. Their calm, professional presence put me at ease. They weren't here to manipulate me or take anything from me. They were here to give me something protection. Good morning, Mrs. Richter. Ethan greeted warmly as I opened the door. Ready to get started? More than ready, I replied. While they worked, my phone began ringing again, unknown numbers this time. I suspected Lena was using other phones to try to bypass the block. I didn't pick up, not once. Each time the phone buzzed, I felt a small surge of pride for my refusal to engage. After installing the first camera near the front door, Ethan came inside to test the feed. This one covers the entire porch, he explained. Anyone who approaches your house, you'll know immediately. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was installing security to protect myself, not from strangers, but from my own son and daughter-in-law. Still, I nodded. Thank you. I need that peace of mind. He gave me a sympathetic smile. Sometimes the people closest to us cause the most trouble. It was a simple sentence, but it held a weight I understood deeply. As the installation continued, I decided to do something I hadn't done in months. I picked up the phone, not to answer Max or Lena, but to call my sister Diana in Chicago. We hadn't talked in so long that I expected surprise, maybe shock, maybe even disappointment. But when she answered, her voice was filled with warmth. Renate! Oh my God, I can't believe this. How are you? I took a breath and let the words flow. I told her everything, the wedding betrayal, the financial abuse, the invasion of my home, the lawyer, the manipulation, my decision to cut them off. Every detail I'd held inside spilled out like water breaking through a dam. She listened quietly, but when I finished, her response stunned me. Renate, it's about time. I blinked, taken aback. What do you mean? Sister, she said gently. Every time we talked over the last few years, all you did was tell me how much money you gave them. You sounded proud, but also empty. It was like you were measuring your worth by how much you spent. And I didn't know how to tell you this without hurting you, but Max never spoke about you with love. It was always, Mom paid for this, or Mom covered that, but never I miss my mom, or I care about her. Her words sliced clean through me. I had been buying the illusion of importance. Diana continued softly. And Lena, she always spoke about your future money. Whenever she came to visit the family here, she'd say, when Renate is gone, we can remodel her house, or when we inherit, we'll invest in a business. I sat down as a cold chill slid through my body. They had been planning my money long before I realized it. I thought I was supporting them out of love, but they saw me as a temporary obstacle standing between them and a financial prize. I must have been silent too long because Diana's voice softened even more. Renate, listen to me. You are not wrong. You are not cruel. You are not heartless. You're finally protecting yourself. And I'm proud of you. Proud. I hadn't heard that word in so long. I felt it like a soft hand on my cheek. After we hung up, I sat at the table in a thoughtful silence. All these years I had been trying to earn a place in my son's heart when in reality, there was no place to earn. Whatever space had existed long ago had been replaced with entitlement. Just then, the doorbell rang. My heart jumped, but I quickly checked the camera feed. It was Eleanor, my new neighbor, and she held a mug in her hand. I opened the door, relieved. I brought you some fresh coffee, she said with a smile. I figured today might be a lot. She was right. It was a lot. But surprisingly, not too much. I invited her in, and we sat together while Ethan continued his work. I told you yesterday, Eleanor. said after a sip, my daughter did something similar, manipulated me emotionally for money. When I finally cut her off, she said I didn't love her. But the truth was, I finally loved myself. Her words wrapped around me like a warm blanket. Do you ever regret it? I asked softly. Only that I didn't do it sooner, she answered. Her calm certainty gave me strength. As we talked, Ethan walked in carrying a tablet. The cameras are all connected, he said. Do you want to see? He handed me the tablet, and on the screen I saw my home from every angle: front yard, back door, driveway, side gate. A sense of security settled over me. This house, my sanctuary, was no longer theirs to invade. When the installation was done, I thanked Ethan and his father profusely. They left with warm smiles and sincere wishes for my safety. As the door closed, I felt something shift in the air again, this time lighter, brighter. A fresh start, a reclaiming. Later that evening, while making tea, I glanced at the footage on the screen again. And that's when I saw it, not in the present, but earlier in the day. A car slowly passing by my house. Maxis. Then another, Lena driving this time. Another pass, another slow approach, like hawks circling prey. But prey I was no longer. I documented each sighting with the precise timestamps, just as Mr. Weber advised. If they were building a case against me, I was building one right back, quietly, calmly, intelligently. That night, before going to bed, I sat in my garden under the moonlight, breathing in the scent of fresh soil and blooming flowers. The world felt different, not safer, not entirely, but mine. For the first time in years, I whispered a wish to myself: let me find peace, even if it means letting go. The next few days passed with an unsettling mixture of peace and tension, like the calm that settles over the ocean before a storm breaks open the sky. I tried to fall into a routine, one built entirely around myself, for the first time in years. I made breakfast without rushing. I opened the windows and let sunlight wash over the furniture they had once judged as old-fashioned. I tended to my small garden, trimming leaves and talking softly to the plants the way I used to when Robert was alive. And every evening, Eleanor checked in on me, sometimes with tea, sometimes with muffins, sometimes with nothing more than a warm smile that told me I wasn't alone. But despite the peace, there was a tension underneath, buzzing like a distant alarm. And the source of that tension was Max and Lena. The security cameras captured everything. Every morning, every afternoon, every night, there they were. Driving past my house slowly, like predators prowling the perimeter of something they believed belonged to them. Sometimes they parked across the street for 5 or 10 minutes, just sitting there, staring at the house. Other times they passed by 2 or 3 times within an hour. They never got out. They never approached the door. But the message was clear. They were waiting, watching, planning. I documented each sighting carefully, filling pages with timestamps, just as Mr. Weber had advised. It felt strange to be documenting my own son's actions as potential threats, but everything inside me told me this wasn't ordinary behavior. They weren't coming because they were concerned about me. They were coming because their money supply had dried up and desperation had begun to replace entitlement. On Friday morning, I was quietly having breakfast when the doorbell rang. My heart skipped, and I immediately checked the camera feed. A young woman stood at my door, a stranger with a neat professional suit, a folder in her hands, and a practiced smile. She looked official, government official. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. When I opened the door, she gave me a friendly nod. "Good morning, Mrs. Renate Richter," she said. "My name is Mrs. Schmidt. I'm a social investigator from the Office of Senior Services. We received a report regarding your well-being, and I'm here to conduct a wellness check." My blood ran cold. They had escalated. Max and Lena had gone beyond manipulation, beyond intrusions, beyond legal pressure. They had gone to the government. They had reported me as mentally unstable. Every word this woman spoke was a nail being hammered into the foundation of the life I was trying to rebuild. "May I see your identification?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain calm. She showed it official, legitimate. This wasn't a scare tactic. It was real. "I'd like to come in, if that's all right," she said politely. Refusing would make me look paranoid. I stepped aside and let her in. She sat at the table, took out a form, and began reading. "Mrs. Richter, we received a report stating that you have shown unusual financial behavior, have isolated yourself from family, installed unnecessary security measures, and refused medical evaluations recommended by your loved ones." Every sentence felt like another betrayal slicing deeper. She continued, "We were also informed that you might be hoarding medication or neglecting your personal health." My breath shook. I recognized the wording, the tone, the manipulative structure. It was Lena's voice written into a government document. I took a slow breath and said, "Before I say anything, I would like to call my lawyer." Mrs. Schmidt looked slightly uneasy. "Ma'am, this is just a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't." "I'm calling my lawyer." I cut her off. "You may wait, or you may return later, but I will not answer questions without representation." She hesitated, then nodded stiffly. "Very well." Mr. Weber arrived 20 minutes later, and the transformation in Mrs. Schmidt's demeanor was immediate. Her professional confidence shifted into something more cautious. "Miss Schmidt," he said after reviewing her paperwork, "I hope you have a court order for this investigation." She blinked. "We received a report from concerned family members." "The same family," he interrupted coolly, "that broke into her house without permission. The same family that attempted to coerce her into signing a power of attorney. The same family that has been financially dependent on her for years." Mrs. Schmidt's expression tightened. Mr. Weber placed a thick folder on the table. "This contains documentation of financial exploitation totaling a $33,400, emotional manipulation, harassment, and an attempted legal takeover of my client's assets." She leafed through the pages, her posture slowly shifting from confidence to discomfort. When she finally asked me questions directly, I answered each one calmly and clearly. "Do you manage your finances independently?" "Yes." "I can show you my statements, Bo." "Do you live alone by choice?" "Yes, and I have healthy relationships with my neighbors." "Do you take any medication regularly?" "No." "Only vitamins?" "Do you feel confused or forgetful?" "No. But I feel threatened by my own son." Her pen hovered midair. She wasn't expecting such clarity. When the conversation was over, she closed her folder and said, "Mrs. Richter, based on this interview and the documentation provided, I see no indication that you are at risk. I will be closing this case." Only when the door closed behind her did I feel my knees weaken. Mr. Weber placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "They're escalating," he warned. "I need you to prepare yourself. This won't be the last attempt." "What more can they do?" I whispered. "They can attempt a court petition for mental incompetence," he said. "But don't panic. We will fight it. We have evidence. And we have truth. After left, I sank into my chair, shaken to my core. It was one thing for Max and Lena to manipulate me emotionally, another for them to invade my home, but to try to weaponize the legal system against me, to take away my independence, my dignity, my freedom. That was something darker, something far more dangerous. Later that afternoon, Eleanor came over with soup. She found me sitting at the table, quiet and pale. What happened? She asked gently. And so I told her every detail, every violation, every fear. Her face hardened. They won't stop, Renate, not until they're forced to. Do you think Max really wants to take my freedom? I whispered. Eleanor hesitated, then answered honestly. I think Max wants his comfort back, and he'll believe any lie Lena tells him if it gets him there. Her honesty stung, but it was real. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the son I raised, the boy who once brought me dandelions from the yard and said they were flowers because they were picked with love. Somewhere along the way, that boy had disappeared, and in his place stood a man I didn't know, a man who would rather declare his mother incompetent than work for his own rent, a man who loved my money more than my existence, a man I had to protect myself from. The next morning, I woke with a heaviness in my chest that felt almost physical, the kind of heaviness that comes from knowing the battle isn't over, not even close. I moved slowly, my steps echoing faintly across the quiet house. The kitchen felt colder, the air sharper. Even the sunlight filtering through the curtains seemed dimmer, hesitant, as if it too feared what came next. I made tea instead of coffee today, hoping it would calm the tremor I still felt inside. As the kettle whistled, I stared at the security monitor mounted on the wall. Overnight recordings showed nothing alarming, just a stray cat crossing the porch and the occasional car passing on the street. But I knew the peace wouldn't last. Max and Lena were too desperate, too entitled, too deeply invested in reclaiming the life they built off my back to disappear so easily. After breakfast, I decided to visit my garden again. The roses needed trimming, and tending to them always soothed me. I stepped outside, breathing in the cool morning air, but halfway to the bushes, I stopped. A familiar car was across the street, Max's, parked, engine off. He wasn't inside. But when I looked again, I saw movement. He and Lena were walking toward the corner, talking in hushed, agitated tones. I felt a hollow ache in my chest. I didn't want to hide from them, but I didn't want to confront them either, not without legal support. So I stepped back inside and locked the door behind me. A few minutes later, the phone rang again, unknown number. Then another. Then another. I let them ring. I wasn't their prey anymore. By noon, I heard a soft knock at my back door. My heart dropped, but before panic could rise, I saw Eleanor's face on the screen. I exhaled, relieved, and let her in. You look drained, she said, gently squeezing my arm. Did something happen? I told her everything, the social worker visit, the tension, the fear of what Max and Lena might try next. Eleanor listened quietly, her expression growing more serious with each detail. Renette, she said finally, you need support. Not just from me, but from people who understand exactly what you're going through. Before I could ask what she meant, she added, I'm inviting you to meet my friends from the garden club. They're coming tonight. They've all dealt with this kind of thing. I think their stories will help you. I hesitated. I hadn't been part of any group, in years. But after yesterday's ordeal, I knew I needed strength from somewhere. All right, I said. I'll join. That evening, The women arrived: Cynthia from the salon, Maria from 3 streets over, Carmen with her warm laugh, and Alfreda, the oldest among them, with wise eyes and a soothing presence. They brought pastries, tea, and an atmosphere of good energy that immediately softened the tension I'd been carrying. We sat in the living room, and Eleanor introduced me formally. "This is Renette," she said. "She's been dealing with something many of us have experienced." The women turned to me with compassion, not pity. "Would you like to tell us what happened?" Maria asked gently. I nodded and began. I told them about the exclusion from the wedding, the years of financial support, the exploitation, the invasion of my home, the legal threats, the social worker. As I spoke, I watched their expressions shift, not in shock, but in recognition. When I finished, there was a long moment of silence. Then Alfreda, who was 80 and carried herself like a seasoned warrior, spoke first. "Renate," she said, "you've been through a lot. But let me tell you something, you're not alone. This," she gestured to the entire group, "is more common than you think." Carmen nodded, her eyes fierce. "My daughter tried to take over my bank accounts once she realized I was saving money for myself. Claimed she was protecting me. What she really wanted was access." Maria added, "My brother used to guilt me into paying his bills. When I stopped, he said I didn't love him anymore." Cynthia rolled her eyes. "My eldest son said I was selfish for not co-signing a car loan. Selfish." At 65, their stories wrapped around me like a shield. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel isolated. Didn't feel like I was losing my mind. Didn't feel guilty. I felt understood. Then Alfreda reached over and held my hands in hers. "Let me tell you the most painful truth," she said softly. "If someone only loves you when you give, then they never loved you. They love the giving." Her words hit me right in the heart, so true, so raw, so long ignored. The rest of the evening turned unexpectedly warm. We shared stories, laughed gently, and cried a little too. The women were strong, not because they were unhurt, but because they had survived hurt and rebuilt themselves from the inside out. Being surrounded by them gave me strength I didn't know I was missing. Before they left, Eleanor squeezed my hand. "You're one of us now," she said with a smile. "We'd take care of our own." After they all left, I sat alone in the quiet living room, feeling strangely whole. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt alive with echoes of compassion. But peace never lingers long when danger is circling. The next morning, while painting a new floral pattern on my canvas, a hobby I had neglected for far too long, I heard a firm knock on the door. Too firm, too familiar. I froze, the camera feed popped up automatically, and my blood turned to ice. It was Max and Lena and 2 strangers in formal clothing. A chill spread through me as I recognized the posture, the stiff expressions, the clipped walk. They were professionals, lawyers, or evaluators, brought for one purpose. This wasn't a visit. It was an attack. Before I even stepped away from the canvas, my phone vibrated. A message from Mr. Weber. "Renette, I need to speak to you immediately. They have filed a formal petition for mental incompetence." My breath caught. So it had begun, the war Mr. Weber warned about. And this time, they weren't here to talk. They were here to take everything. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I stared at the security monitor. Max and Lena stood on my porch like they owned the place, their eyes filled with determination, not love. Behind them were 2 unfamiliar individuals, one man holding a leather binder, the other a woman with a clipboard, both dressed in formal business attire. Everything inside me recoiled. This wasn't a family visit. This was a coordinated ambush. I didn't move from behind the curtain. I didn't open the door. Instead, I reached for my phone with trembling hands and called Mr. Weber. He answered on the second ring. Rennet listened to me carefully. He said, voice brisk and firm, "Do not open the door. I'm already on my way." I exhaled shakily. They brought people, I think professionals. They're knocking now. "I expected this," he said. "Stay inside. I'll call the police as well. They're violating the temporary boundary we discussed." Another loud knock echoed through the house, sharp, aggressive, demanding. "Or Mrs. Richter?" A man's voice called from outside. "We are here to conduct an evaluation ordered in relation to concerns about your mental well-being." My blood ran cold. Evaluate me on my porch without my consent. I stepped closer to the monitor and zoomed in on Max's face. He looked anxious, panicked even, but his panic wasn't for me. It was for himself, for the life he and Lena had built from my savings. A life now crumbling beneath their feet. Another knock. Then another, louder each time. "Mom," Max shouted. "Please open the door and talk to us." For a brief moment, the sound of his voice, my son's voice, flickered across my memories. I remembered him as a child, running to me with scraped knees, calling me Mama when he had nightmares. But the man outside was not that child. That child would never have tried to take my freedom. And so I stayed silent. After a few moments, the knocking stopped. The porch fell silent except for murmured voices. I stayed by the monitor, watching every movement. They talked hastily among themselves, glancing at the door, the windows, the driveway. Then the man with the binder took out a paper and attempted to slide it under the door. But I had already blocked the bottom with a draft stopper. His expression soared. Minutes later, the sound of police sirens approached, and my breath finally eased. Mr. Weber and 2 officers arrived, pulling up beside Max's car. Max ran toward them immediately, gesturing wildly, pointing at my house, my safe place, as if I were a criminal locked inside. I watched the exchange through the monitor with an ache twisting inside my chest. It was surreal watching my own son argue with the police outside my home. Lena hovered nervously at the edge of the porch, her arms crossed, her lips pressed tightly, fury simmering beneath her face. One of the officers approached my door and knocked gently. "Ma'am, Mrs. Richter, it's the police. You can open the door." I checked the camera feed again to confirm. Only then did I unlock the door and crack it open. Mr. Weber was right behind the officer. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Yes, I'm fine." The officer tipped his hat politely. "Your lawyer has explained the situation. They don't have the legal right to force an evaluation without a court order. They have to leave." Relief poured through me. I opened the door a little wider where Max could see me, and for a split second our eyes met. His gaze was a whirlwind of panic, anger, and disbelief. In his mind, I was ruining everything. In mine, I was saving myself. "Mom," he exclaimed. "Why won't you talk to us? We're trying to help you." Help. That word again. Twisted poison, repurposed into manipulation. Mr. Weber stepped in front of me. "This conversation is over. Any further attempts to contact her must go through my office. Leave now." The officers nodded firmly. "You heard him. You all need to leave the property immediately." Lena's mask slipped entirely then. She pointed at me, eyes blazing. "You can't do this to us. Renee, you owe us. We've built our life around you. You can't pull the rug out now." Owe them. The entitlement stung worse than any insult. I straightened, stepping forward slightly. Lena, I said calmly, I owe you nothing. She recoiled as if I had slapped her. Max clenched his fists. Mom? Please, you're making a mistake. I shook my head. No, Max. The mistake was letting this go on for so long. The officers escorted them toward their cars. The two professionals they brought with them protested half-heartedly, but without legal authority. They had no power. As Max got into the car, he looked back at me with an expression twisted by desperation. This isn't over, he warned. We'll take this to court. I know, I said, and I'm ready. Lena slammed the passenger door so hard the sound vibrated in the quiet street. And then they were gone, racing off like wounded animals licking their pride. When the street finally emptied, Mr. Weber turned to me. You handled that well, he said. But Renee, you need to brace yourself. They did file an incompetence petition. We'll receive official notice within days. I nodded, though my hands trembled slightly. Will they win? He held my gaze. Not if we fight. And we will fight? He walked me inside and sat with me for a while, explaining the process. It would be ugly. It would be exhausting. It might take weeks, maybe months. But we had evidence. We had witness statements. We had medical documentation. And most importantly, we had truth. After he left, the house felt strangely still. Not the peaceful stillness from earlier, but a heavy, loaded stillness, like the air before thunder cracks the sky. Eleanor came by later with a casserole. The moment she saw my face, she knew. They came again, didn't they? She asked. I nodded. She sighed deeply. They won't stop until someone forces them. Good thing you have the law on your side. Do you think Max truly believes I'm incompetent? I asked, my voice softer than I intended. Eleanor looked at me with compassionate sorrow. I think he believes whatever Lena tells him, if it benefits him. And I think he wants your money more than he wants the truth. Her words were painful but real. And I was done hiding from reality. That night when I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling and whispered a truth I had denied for too long. My son is gone. The boy I raised is gone. And a tear slid down my cheek, not for Max, but for the woman who finally let herself see the truth. The days leading up to the court hearing felt like walking across thin glass, every step careful, every breath shallow, every sound amplified into something heavier than it needed to be. I tried to occupy my time with small tasks, watering my plants, organizing drawers, cooking simple meals, but no matter what I did, the looming reality of what was coming next sat in my chest like a stone. My own son, the boy I raised with love and sacrifice, was attempting to declare me mentally incompetent. And not out of concern, not out of fear for my well-being, but out of hunger for control, for comfort, for the money he believed he deserved. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, the doorbell rang again. My heart jumped. But when I checked the camera feed, it wasn't Max or Lena. It was Cynthia from the salon, holding a small bag. I opened the door, surprised. I brought you something, she said with a warm smile. Lavender oil helps with sleep. I figured you could use some. I felt emotion tug at my chest. Thank you. Really? Ooh, Eleanor told us about the petition, Cynthia said carefully, stepping inside. Would all want you to know we're with you. All of us. The thought of a small army of elderly women who had faced their own battles, who had survived betrayal and manipulation, standing behind me felt powerful, humbling, strengthening. When Cynthia left, I sat on the couch and held the small bottle in my hands, breathing in its calming scent. And for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I wasn't walking into that courtroom alone. Maybe I had allies. Maybe I had a chance. 2 days later, Mr. Weber called. "Renette," he said, "we've received the court dates. The hearing is in 3 weeks. It will be intense, but we're ready. And I've reviewed their petition. There are inconsistencies, exaggerated claims, and zero medical evidence. We're in good shape. Do you think the judge will believe them?" I asked quietly. "Judge Miller is known for fairness," he reassured. "He also hates when children exploit elderly parents. We have the stronger case. A breath I didn't know I'd been holding released from my lungs. What should I do until then? Keep documenting everything," he said, "and stay calm. They'll likely try more tactics before the hearing." He was right. They did. That same afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. A long, dramatic paragraph from Max, dripping with guilt, tripping, and manipulation. "Mom, please talk to me. Lena is devastated. We're worried about you. We don't want to fight. We just want to help you. You're closing yourself off from your family. Please let us in before things get worse." I stared at the message for a long moment before deleting it. I didn't reply. My silence, I realized, was my strongest boundary. Later that week, I visited Dr. Moore again for follow-up tests Mr. Weber recommended. Not because I doubted my sanity, but because I wanted to prepare. She greeted me warmly. "Mrs. Richter," she said, "you're doing remarkably well emotionally for someone under this much stress." "Some days, I don't feel like it," I admitted. "That's normal," she replied. "But you're grounded, aware, articulate, and your mental capacity is excellent." I will testify to that. Her confidence gave me strength. After the appointment, I took myself out for lunch, something I hadn't done in years. I sat at a small cafe, ordered a salad and tea, and watched people walk by. For the first time, I noticed something I had forgotten: the world was bigger than Max and Lena's demands. Life existed outside their drama, and I was allowed to live it. That night, Eleanor invited me to her house. When I arrived, her living room was filled again. Carmen, Maria, Alfreda, and Cynthia were all there, each offering warm smiles. They welcomed me like family, like sisters I never had. "Sit down, Renette," Alfreda said. "We're preparing you for court." I blinked. "Preparing me." They nodded, and Maria placed a cup of chamomile tea in my hands. "You'll be nervous. That's normal. But we're going to help you remember who you are. Not the version Max sees, the real you." Then, one by one, they had me practice answering questions. What did you spend your money on? Why did you stop helping financially? How do you manage your daily life? Do you understand your own finances? Each question was followed by gentle guidance, reassurance, and encouragement. They weren't lawyers. They weren't professionals, but they had lived experiences, and that made them wise in ways no textbook could teach. At one point, I hesitated while answering, and Eleanor touched my hand. "Speak your truth," she said. "Not the truth they want, but the truth that belongs to you." The whole room nodded. By the end of the night, I felt more prepared than I ever imagined possible. When I returned home, I found myself replaying their words, their strength, their wisdom, and something inside me shifted, a transformation that felt like shedding an old, wounded identity and stepping into a new, stronger one. The next few days passed quietly. Max and Lena stopped driving by the house, or at least they did it less frequently. Maybe they were preparing too. Maybe they were gathering more lies, more fabricated witness statements, more manipulative stories. I didn't know, but I refused to live in fear. I spent my mornings reading, my afternoons painting roses, sunsets, anything that brought beauty into my home, my evenings on the phone with Diana or visiting Eleanor. Slowly, I began to feel like myself again. But on the morning of the hearing, as I stood in front of the mirror, putting on my best black suit, the weight of everything returned. This wasn't just about money. This was about dignity, freedom, autonomy. This was about proving that I was capable, sane, intelligent, and that my life belonged to me. When Mr. Weber arrived to pick me up, he looked confident. "You look strong," he said. Judges noticed that. "I feel strong," I replied. And I did. Nervous, yes, but strong. We drove to the courthouse in silence. My thoughts swirled like leaves in a storm, memories of Max as a little boy, his laughter, his hugs, his innocent love, and memories of the man he had become, entitled, manipulative, and willing to destroy me for financial gain. When we arrived, I stepped out of the car and inhaled deeply. The courthouse loomed ahead of me like a symbol of justice and fear combined, but I straightened my spine and walked forward. I wasn't just facing them. I was reclaiming myself. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old paper, a scent that carried decades of stories, some of justice, some of loss, and some of battles fought by people who never imagined they'd end up here. As I walked through the hallway beside Mr. Weber, the click of my low heels echoed with a confidence I didn't fully feel yet, but each step reminded me of everything I had survived: the manipulation, the betrayal, the nights of fear, the invasion of my home, the attempt to steal my freedom. I wasn't just walking toward a courtroom. I was walking toward the truth. When we entered, Max and Lena were already there, sitting side by side. Max wore a new suit, probably bought with money they didn't have, and Lena dressed in somber black, her expression a crafted blend of stress and innocence. Their lawyer stood in front of them, flipping through a thick folder of documents, lies printed on paper. The moment Max saw me, something flickered in his gaze: surprise, maybe, or disbelief. Perhaps he expected me to show up shaking, fragile, confused. But weakness was a luxury I no longer afforded anyone. Mr. Weber guided me to our table, speaking softly. "Remember what we practiced. Stay calm. Your clarity will speak for itself." I nodded. When the judge entered, the entire room shifted. His presence was commanding, firm, but fair looking, the kind of man who had seen too many families torn apart by greed. Judge Miller surveyed the courtroom with sharp eyes before taking his seat. The hearing began with Max's lawyer. He spoke in a grave, practiced tone, painting a picture of me as a deteriorating, confused woman who'd fallen under the influence of manipulative neighbors, who'd suddenly made irrational financial decisions, who could no longer be trusted with her own life. He presented their fabricated statements, exaggerated claims, and emotional performances. Lena even dabbed her eyes at one point, though no real tears fell. But the more they spoke, the more the judge's expression hardened, not in agreement, but in scrutiny. He asked pointed questions they struggled to answer. He pressed for medical evidence. They had none. He asked why they hadn't visited me regularly if they were so concerned. Their explanations were weak. Then it was our turn. Mr. Weber stood with calm authority and began dismantling their case piece by piece. He presented the documented evidence of financial exploitation, the transfers, the records, the timeline. He explained the intrusion into my home, the coercive attempt to force a power of attorney, the harassment, the pattern of manipulation. He submitted the professional evaluation from Dr. More clear, concise, undeniable. Then it was time for witnesses. Mr. Green, my pharmacist, testified honestly about how he was tricked by Lena into signing a misleading document. Mr. Summer and Ethan testified that I had spoken and behaved rationally and responsibly when arranging my home protection. Eleanor and my circle of new friends each took the stand, describing my clarity, independence, and emotional strength. But nothing felt as heavy as the moment when I walked to the witness stand. I sat down, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The courtroom quieted. Even Max seemed to hold his breath. Mr. Weber began gently. Mrs. Richter, please tell the court why you decided to stop financially supporting your son and daughter-in-law. I lifted my chin because I realized what I was giving wasn't love. It was survival for them, but destruction for me. The judge leaned forward slightly. I continued. For 3 years, I paid their rent, their bills, their emergencies. I gave up my own comforts, my own needs, my own stability. I thought that's what a mother does. But the moment something mattered to me, the wedding, they excluded me completely. My voice wavered only slightly. I wasn't special enough. Their words, not mine. I saw Max shift uncomfortably. And when I finally said no, I added, they didn't worry about me. They worried about losing my money. I spoke of the forced intrusion, the lawyer they brought into my home, the attempt to intimidate me into signing control of my life away, the fear, the clarity, the transformation. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. Max's lawyer attempted to make me look confused, emotional, manipulated by my friends. But each question he asked, I answered clearly, logically, firmly. His strategy collapsed under the weight of my composure. When both sides rested, Judge Miller took a long moment before speaking. The tension in the room felt like a wire pulled tight. Finally, he cleared his throat and delivered the verdict. After reviewing all evidence, he began, "It is clear to this court that Mrs. Renate Richter is fully competent, mentally, financially, and emotionally." A breath left my lungs. The judge continued, voice firm. "It is also apparent that this petition was motivated by financial interest rather than genuine concern for her well-being. Therefore, the court denies the request for guardianship in its entirety." Lena gasped. Max's shoulders slumped. Their lawyer's face tightened. Mr. Weber smiled. As I stood, something inside me lifted, something heavy, decades old. I had not only won a legal battle, I had reclaimed my dignity. Outside the courthouse, the sun was bright, warm against my skin. Eleanor and the others were waiting for me, cheering softly, embracing me with the kind of love I had once tried desperately to buy from my own family. That night, they gathered at my home. We ate, we laughed, we celebrated freedom, my freedom. And as the night sky stretched above us, dotted with stars, I felt something beautiful bloom inside me. I had survived, I had won. And for the first time in my life, I belonged to myself.